Hey team, welcome back to another review. Interesting title on this one that, could go either way. Why do so many incompetent men become leaders and how to fix it? This is written by a guy called Thomas Chamorro Premusic and written through Harvard Business School Press in 2019. 9 chapters, 218 pages. The author, Thomas, has a PhD and is an international authority on talent management, leadership development, and people analytics. He is the chief talent scientist at the Manpower Group, co-founder of meta-profiling and deeper signals. He is a professor of business psychology at the University College London and Columbia University. He has published 10 books and 150 scientific articles. So in all of this, he knows his stuff. Now, why am I reviewing this book? Because, well, personally, I was gifted this book by a very good friend. He thought it might be an interesting read and one to review. I've studied women's studies since the 1980s, and I was a student in the girls can do anything era, and I teach leadership. So after 30 plus years in the workforce, I see the difference in leadership between men and women, and I've experienced excellence and incompetence from both. I have zero interest personally and professionally in advocating a gender position. However, I am interested in learning about the science, the numbers, and the impact. What is important with this book is it actually in the title. This isn't about mistaking that all men are incompetent leaders. It is about why so many incompetent men make it into leadership. My position is that if we can make leadership better, then the reading and the understanding is worth it. Let's see what's inside the book. So let's get into this. Chapter 1, why most leaders are inert. Leadership has a male stereotype. When we ask people about leaders, there is a tendency to identify men first and to share more male traits. Rightly or wrongly, it is positioned as a more male role. And most leaders have a negative or an inhibiting impact on teams and businesses. Their impact is predominantly results in anxiety, burnout, distrust, and reduced engagement. People leave bad bosses. I'm just putting out the statistics here. To note, 75% of leaders and executives, 80% of board members, and 94% of CEOs are male. This does highlight the underrepresentation of women, and it's not because of their lack of ability or motivation. Rather, it is our inability to detect incompetence in leadership, and this happens to be in men. Comments like, ladies, believe in yourself, don't worry what others think, just be yourself, really don't help. And other comments here in chapter 1 as he sets up for the book are, many leaders get there because of their networks, their ability to manage and to promote their personal and professional reputation. It's all about self. It's the external confidence as opposed to those who are more secure with their internal confidence. The more confident you are in your skill base, the less you seem to actually talk about it. So chapter 2, confidence disguised as competence. Seen this one. Less confident does not mean less competent. And more confident does not mean more competent. And then we talk about self-confidence should not be measured by the ability to talk and sell. Competence is how good you are at something. Confidence is how good you think you are at something. And confidence influences self-esteem. Self-esteem is feeling good about ourselves. And all of this stuff is important. that leads into self-awareness, and this is knowing in reality actually how good you are. And then from this can come overconfidence. And overconfidence is overrating your job performance. And in this, overconfidence often results in having trouble receiving feedback. Overconfidence is about self and less about the team they lead. It is pervasive because how we lead and think is the model our teams will follow. That's what you create. Competent individuals prepare more, act with caution, and become more aware of potential risks and obstacles. And with all of this, leaders are often more deprived of negative, honest feedback. It sets interesting conditions for leadership. And in saying this, we can add 70% of employees are not engaged at work, and only 4% of employees regularly speak positively about their bosses. Good leadership is not the norm, but the exception. This is really sad. Thinking about competence and confidence and add in self-awareness, note, most coachable people are unlikely to think of themselves as better than they actually are. Add to this bucket of things that are somewhat fickle and negative. There is more of this in this chapter, because whilst transparency may be said to be a company value, acting with truth and transparency is politically unwise in a career suicide situation where you are led by confidence, not competence. Overconfidence can result in leaders putting themselves forward for tasks for which they are not qualified or equipped, and this handicaps their performance, and the morale of their teams. Incompetence in leadership leads to cultures of white lies and cover your butt. So then chapter 3, why do the bad guys win? Many obnoxious leaders attain impressive levels of personal career success despite toxic personalities. Narcissism, 40% higher in men, and psychopaths. Well, they are two traits that are more common in leaders than in the normal population. They are often masked by seemingly attractive traits, which in the long run are destructive. Look for these, like high levels of entitlement, love an attractive corporate picture, which is unusually large and often prominent, self-referencing pronouns, using I more often than we, valuing power and achievement more than others, selling, high-profile networking is important, evidence of a lack of empathy, a thought that more humility and tolerance is a weakness that results in fewer recognitions and rewards. The charisma myth. The most effective business leaders in the world are not exactly known for their charisma. Look to the head of Zara, IKEA, General Motors. Angela Merkel, the respected German and often assumed leader of the EU, is an example of this. She is not charismatic at all. The most effective CEOs are not necessarily charismatic, but they are remarkably persistent and humble. They are excellent at nurturing talent in their teams, and they don't care for self-promotion. It is about modesty. The effects of humble leadership tend to cascade down to the rest of the organization, turning leaders into genuine role models. Underlying all of this, research says that in choosing humble leaders, the world becomes a better place. However, many fall to the allure of charisma. When followers are anxious, they are more likely to choose a charismatic leader. It is likened to the feeling of love at first sight. And then we hate to admit we are wrong, and if the situation fails, we try to prove for too long that we weren't wrong and our attraction was right. Charismatic leaders can be great. They can be hypnotic and energizing. However, this allure clouds how people evaluate the actual performance of the leader. FYI, charisma does have a male gender bias. Men can be mesmerizing. And when these leaders have greater connections and networks, that appeal is even greater. Charismatic leaders are like dealers of hope, and this is okay if they have competence and work ethically with this. Beware, it can be a mirage. Positives, positives of charismatic leaders generally, well, they have good strategic skills of selling a vision, are great at setting a direction and pushing for innovation. They inspire, communicate, and can walk the talk. They are sensitive to cultural norms, recognise employees, nurture, are social, and emotionally engaged. There are negatives there too. Um, they are generally leaders who are not strong tactically, nor do they necessarily operate with efficiency in organising and executing tasks. So then, let's move on to chapter 5. Then what is the female advantage? Yeah, we know. It's EQ. EQ is a greater measure of leadership suitability and a central quality that results in higher employee engagement, stronger resilience, and better self-management. Interestingly, the similarities in male and female leaders are in fact greater than differences, sitting at 78%. Women, however, once in management and leadership roles, generally outperform. Does this parallel with the generally higher interest in people? Which is a great question. EQ can be a predictor of integrity. So if we are employing leaders with an emphasis on EQ, then potentially we could have more honest and ethical practice. EQ links to more transformational leadership. Leaders with strong EQ are better able to motivate, turn visions into actionable plans, are stronger role models, better at assigning tasks, monitoring and measuring employees' performance, setting rewards and offering incentives. EQ links then to the leader's personal effectiveness, and this is a measure of self-control and resilience, measures of empathy, seeing others' perspectives and demonstrating that they are less self-centered and are more flexible in problem solving, points to self-awareness, understanding of how you affect others and in turn what others think of you. Now, this is more evident when it's missing. We all find out when self-awareness is not there. Women tend to display these positive qualities more. So then in chapter 6, what good leaders look like. And remember, different companies prioritize and target different traits and value different things. And that's super, super important because different types of leaders fit in different places. Amazon, for example, value curiosity. Twitter values the growth mindset. And American Express, they look for grit. Others all across different companies look for learning agility. But there are some other things that crop up. Intellectual capital, i.e. having credibility as an expert in your field. But this is overly relied upon. Past performance. This can be a predictor of future performance, but factor in context and company culture because it matters. Social capital, networks and connections, great people attract great people. Strong cultural fit. This is about how we do things around here, and it differs from place to place. And you need to measure up the company's value on the spectrum of how well or how much do they value dominance or spontaneity or individualism and status. Psychological capital, the ability to look at the bright side, like learning agility and intelligence. The dark side, whether you are a narcissist or a psychopath. And then the personality, the inside, and that's where behaviour profiling comes in. Integrity, people competence. Well, we all know effective leaders build a winning team. They help the team outperform rivals. Effective leaders depend on the team's performance and unite in the pursuit of a shared goal. They develop competence and integrity with and in others. So chapter 7 looks at learning to distrust our instincts. Identifying potential leadership in others is more than, you just know. Biases dominate and suggestions of potential leaders work on hunches, a process that statistically disadvantages women. Instincts favour traits of ambition, risk-taking and assertiveness, and women often need to be more qualified to even be seen. So to get past this, there is a suggestion that we just use solid metrics. Measure data. More structured job interviews measure more accurately and fairly and favour women. Unstructured interviews favour feelings, hunches and biases on the interviewer's part. Use psychometrics. Psychometrics, not IQ tests. Look too at digital networks and footprints. I'm not sure about this one, but we are in the digital age. Note, we shouldn't look so much at values because they measure and interfere and create a bias. But personally, I value values and that really helps me. So I'm out on that one. Chapter 8. How do leaders get better then? First, employ good leaders, then invest in them. Invest in quality development and get higher returns on our investment ROI. 6 things to remember in leadership development. Number 1, some characteristics are hard to change. You're not going to change everything. Number 2, good coaching works. Number 3, beware of focusing only on leaders' strengths. Blind spots are important to focus on too. Number 4, self-awareness is essential. Number 5, it's not easy to go against nature or what nature has created. And number 6, coachability is an integral part of potential. Chapter 9, measuring a leader's impact. Be systematic with the data. Look at cause and effect. To do so, we need to properly understand what leadership and talent is, and then we can measure it. We don't just need more women leaders. We actually just need better leaders. So let's start looking for developing, building, and creating better leaders.